live. I think it will be live in a second. And
So here's the T-shirt.
alrighty, let's
Is
see.
it backwards?
Well, hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am comedian Nazareth, and thank you for joining us on uh, Thanksgiving weekend. That's how committed we are to entertain you and to encourage you and to lift you up. And today, I'm so excited to have a good friend of mine that is. You know what? He is a world-renowned photographer. But he is a comedian at heart. He is so funny. We have so much in common. Every time we do a large event called Night Vision in Colorado, we spend 2 days together, and it's never enough because we always end up laughing. He is so funny, and let me introduce him officially. And I also the rich tapestry of experiences being raised in two of the most visually stimulating cultures of Calcutta, India, and Cairo, Egypt, both shaped and nurtured the unique worldview of award winning world citizen and image hunter David Dobson. Currently based in Nashville, Tennessee, Dobson brings insight and experience gained while shooting on location in, listen to this, over 153 countries. This man professionally took photographs and photographed people worldwide to every assignment. But I want you to know that this man was able to photograph Mother Teresa. How many people can say that? He photographed Mother Teresa. He was born, raised, and lived all over the world. And David Dobson, welcome. Thank you for taking the time and being in the States for this meeting.
ازيك يا باشا?
I understand what you said, but probably 3% of my fan
Yeah.
base would know what you're saying.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. Very nice to see you again. And like you said, every time we get together, I think we're maybe serious for about 4 seconds, and then it just starts getting funny and joking around and kind of like half English and half Arabic. And you're one of my few friends here in the States who I can do that with. So it's always fun.
Now, how is the pandemic like? Someone like you, and every time I go on Instagram, you're either in Morocco, you're in Egypt, you're in somewhere around the world. How is this pandemic stop, and what are you doing now?
Well, the pandemic gave me some extra time to go through my hard drives and my history and go and find pictures that I had lost or forgot to post. And so I think of Instagram as kind of like my magazine. It's not really my like daily journal kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so if you need me, you just call me or fax me or whatever, you know? So, but I always try to put a positive message on Instagram, something funny or some little kind of a twist or something like that. So I think there's a lot of, like hard things going on at the moment and a lot of hard topics that are on the Instagram. And so I figured, I'm going to do something that's kind of fun and a little bit lighter. And at the same time, something that's interesting and travel based, and I'm supposed to be a photographer, so hopefully those posts also say something about my work and what I do.
Oh, they do. And every time I look at him, I want to visit that place. And I'm going, how did he get this shot? How did you get
Well,
an elephant and a camel and a guy who actually be in
yeah,
the picture with a model? I was like,
yeah.
how do you do that?
Well, on Instagram, this whole last week, I was running around in Egypt, okay? But in reality, I was stuck in the second line, that have two lines going around Chick-fil-A. That's really
Yeah.
where I was. The pictures were from before. So, so down in Old Cairo, in the bazaar, the souk, that kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I've been there. I went
Yeah,
to that's called the coffee shop there. It's called
Khan
Muhammad
Khalili.
Al Khalili, Khan Al Khalili.
Yeah,
And
that's
if you
the bazaar.
ladies and gentlemen, what you're gonna learn today is like if you're going with this pandemic is over, I want to visit somewhere overseas today by listening and watching to this podcast. you will learn where you want to go. You will decide on it. Khan al Khalili, is that the place where you go all the way inside this souk or market,
Yeah, yeah,
and then you
yeah,
end up in the bottom, and they have the best food and the best
yeah.
coffee and tea?
Yes. So, you know, I went to an American school in Egypt, but really, really where I learned a lot of life skills was in that area, in the Kanakalili, in all these back alleys and that kind of stuff. And I'm amazed that my parents trusted me to go by myself down into Old Cairo. And in those days, you know, it was a lot safer. World was a different place. And I would just go on adventures and I would go exploring and, you know, like wandering through these back alleys and thinking like, you know, where's Alibaba? And I'm going to like open a door and there's going to be a chamber full of something, you know? So I was always excited to go into Old Cairo. That's where I learned my Arabic. You know, I only know about 6 words in Arabic. You've heard all of them. And but I learned a lot in the streets of Cairo that helped me in my career, like all around the world. So that is a favorite place. So those pictures on Instagram, that's kind of like a fun way to see where I grew up. That's somebody calling from Kanakalili right
Yes.
now.
That's you calling me, actually. And it
I'm
can't be
calling
a
from-
booty call because it's in your desk.
Yeah.
Let me ask
So,
you this. Where
yes.
were you born, David?
Okay, so they tell me that I was born in Brandon, Manitoba.
Who's
So
telling you that? Who's telling you that? That will
Omi
change a
Daoud.
lot of things.
Omi Daoud told me that. That means
Dahoud,
yes, the mother of David. Yeah, my
Your
mom.
mom.
Yeah,
Your,
and my dad
so,
my dad backed it up.
oh, so you were born in Canada, Manitoba, Canada.
Yes, my parents were pastoring up there for a little bit, and I was born there. And before I was 1 year old, we actually moved to Sri Lanka. My parents were missionaries, so we went to Sri Lanka and we stayed there for about 2 years. My middle brother was born there, and then we moved to Calcutta, India, and stayed there for 8 years. And the story
8
goes
years.
on.
So that's
Yeah.
your childhood in Calcutta, India.
Basically, so much of my childhood and what shaped me was from growing up in Calcutta.
What was that like?
Oh, it's impossible to completely describe it, but I'll try. It's a village of about 18 million people. So the British built this fantastic, amazing, glamorous second capital of the British Empire, Calcutta, and it was made for about 100,000 people. But now there's like 18 million or more people living there. So I remember as a kid, I would go walk the dog. And I got my first camera when I was 8 years old. I had seen my dad taking pictures and I wanted a camera. So a pastor friend, Rich Wilkerson, he gave me a camera.
Oh.
And so I started going around walking the dog was the excuse, you know, I'm going to take Benji for a walk. And we would go, you know, he could finish his stuff in about 5 or 10 minutes, but we would go for an hour wandering down some back alleys and stuff and exploring these old British buildings and taking pictures. But Calcutta in the 70s was such an intense and crazy place. On the walk with the dog, I could pass a man with leprosy, a demon-possessed person, an elephant, a Rolls Royce, and the ice cream guy, all in one walk.
Wow.
It was nuts. And it was so visually stimulating. You know, everywhere you looked was a picture. So it was just kind of natural to process the whole thing by taking pictures.
But at the time, you have to have like a 36 or a 24, and then you
Yeah,
have to go
exactly.
develop it. It's not
Yeah.
like now.
No.
You know, you can take a million pictures before you have
Yeah.
to decide, do
Yeah.
I want to stick my tongue out for that
Yes.
picture, or do I want?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this. We're talking about Calcutta. You know, it's funny because one of my latest jokes I made up is I go, there's some places in India, they have temples for rats. They worship rats in
Yeah.
the city. But if you go to the countryside, the farmers are killing the rats because they're eating their crop. So I said,
Yeah.
if you're a rat in India, it's all about location, location, location.
Exactly. But you know, you kind of hit on something. India to me is like, I love India and I don't love India 100%. It's equal. The place is like such a contradiction. It's like two positive magnets. You can't push it together. It's impossible to fully describe the place. And of all the places that I've traveled, I would say that India is probably the most intense part of the world. Like everything is a 10, you know, like sight, sound, smell, everything is maximum. And it's interesting, it's awesome, but after a while you need to go somewhere quiet and shut the door and just be quiet. But I mean, I love it. It's you could never photograph the whole thing.
Now, were you there when Gandhi and then the British pulled out?
Well, no, but thank you. That was in 1946 and 7. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
watching The Crown on Netflix.
Yes,
That's
yes,
how I
yes,
know.
yes. Right, right, right. So I'm a little bit closer to just before Princess Diana in The Crown. So,
Oh,
so we were in Calcutta in the 70s, and that was
mm,
a very turbulent time. There was a war with Bangladesh that was going on, and like when the British left, they didn't really do a good job at dividing the land. They kind of just sketched it out. So what they
mm,
did was, like, let's say India was America. They made California one half, and they made Florida like East California, and they put the capital in West in California, in Sacramento. So they made Pakistan, and they made East Pakistan with India in between. You can't do that.
ah,
So there was a war and confusion and all this kind of stuff. And so during that time, there was 1 million refugees walked into Calcutta. And
mm,
so these memories are from when I was 2 until 10 years old. So I can remember that there was lots of people begging. They had nowhere to go, no place to stay. They were sleeping on the streets. And when we would leave our house, we would have to step out onto the road. And as we were going down the steps, you didn't know if you'd step over people, you didn't know if they were sleeping or if they had died. And so there was a lot of
oh,
malnutrition. People turned to begging, and there was a lot of that going on. And it got so crazy that my father's uncle and aunt, who are missionaries there, and they have a really big project, they met Mother Teresa, who at that time was just Sister Teresa. And she was a teacher in the next building over in a girls' school. And she left to start helping in the street, and they became friends, and they started working on projects together. So as a
mm.
kid, we had to like wave at everybody from church, including Sister Teresa. And then as an adult, I'm like, hey, was Sister Teresa, is that Mother Teresa? Like, yes, of course. That's why we made you, you had to wave. So as an adult, I got to go back to India and take pictures with my uncle and aunt. And they were very close friends with her. And so I hung out with my aunt, Auntie Hulda, and they would go and have tea and talk about their next project and what they were going to do together. And I'm like, no way, this is so cool. So that's how I got to take those pictures.
So Mother Teresa, I mean, come on, she wasn't your typical model, like, changed clothes and
No, no,
no.
it's so interesting. She had 3 outfits, one to wear, one to wash, and one to repair. And most of the time, like, I can't remember her wearing shoes. She's walking around in Calcutta barefoot, and she had no bodyguards, no black Suburban, no earpieces, just maybe 2 other of her Sisters of Mercy. And they would just go cruising around and just do stuff.
Now, is she Indian? She's Indian, right?
No, 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 no. I think she's from Macedonia.
Oh,
And
really? I
yeah,
did not know that.
yeah. So she came over as a young woman, maybe when she was 19, to India to begin like working. Like we would say
With
begin
the
her
orphans.
ministry. Yeah, yeah. So she
Wow.
was a school teacher, as far as I know. Yeah.
And you took her pictures and
Yeah,
all
well, I
that?
took pictures. Well, there's some funny stuff. I would hang out with her, with my aunt, and my uncle. I have my other, not her husband, but my mom's brother. Well, I better explain. In missionary world, everybody's uncle and auntie. So you would
Yeah.
be Uncle Nazareth, Uncle Naz, and like that. So anyways, my uncle, Uncle Wayne, and Annie Hulda, we go over for tea. And they start talking about stuff and the projects and everything. Well, she was a small woman. She wasn't that tall. And
Mm.
so she was standing at the top of the staircase, and we were walking up the stairs, and my uncle and aunt went first, and they're like, oh, hello, sister, nice to see you again, or like, hello, mother, and blah, 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 talking. And so she says, please grab a chair and go sit on the veranda. I can't move as fast as I used to. I'm like 87 now. And so By the time she said all that, I got to eye level with her, and I go, "What? You're only 27?" And she's like, "Woo, woo, 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 woo," and she's laughing. But you don't want to mess with Mother Teresa because she's very well connected with security in heaven. And, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm lucky to get in with a silk. My crown's going to be an aluminum ring. Other people's going to have like
Now tell me,
diamonds.
you are the best guy that does an Indian accent because
Yeah, well,
we
that's
used
how
to
I was
laugh.
raised.
So you can speak, you can do an Indian accent.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Uh,
I know one is I mean it's appropriate when you went fishing.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
You
that is a
can
very interesting story. It's your show, so I don't want to get banned from your show for.
right.
Yeah,
But what other like when you talk like we were talking and
yeah.
some people think that's like picking on the or being racist, but it's not. It's
No,
actually it's a beautiful
that's
way.
what I'm doing right now. My accent right now is actually racist because I wound up growing up speaking Indian English and going to a British school. So there was such a mix by the time we got back to the States. Like the kids in America didn't know who we were, what we were, where, like that. So no, Nazareth, no, listen, I've enjoyed all your comedies and all. And so for so many years, I'm so honored and privileged to humbly be on your show, Babuji.
I was with a friend the other day and he lived in India for a while. No, he was doing work in India and he was asking a guy, a technician, he said, "Did you do this? Did you fix the machine?" And the guy would just move his head.
Yeah,
And he goes, "Did you fix the machine?" And the guy would do the, he goes, "Did you fix the machine?" He goes, "I told you yes." He goes, "No, you didn't say anything." He said, "I did this." That means,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is
So
that,
sometimes that can just mean like how Americans say, uh-huh. It doesn't mean I agree with you or I disagree with you, but I heard you. Uh-huh. So
mm.
there's different ways.
Oh, there are
So yeah,
different
yeah,
ways.
yeah. So this standard one is like, yeah, yeah, right,
Will
right,
you
right.
shake your
Oh,
head just
I'm
like
listening.
sideways?
I'm listening, but I'm not saying I'm listening. I'm wobbling my head like that. But if they go up to the side, like, fine. Oh, okay, got
all
it,
the way up.
got it.
The chin goes
Yeah,
up to the
yeah, yeah,
side.
yeah. Then
Uh,
that's a positive confirmation.
when do
Yeah.
you know to run that they're gonna shoot you?
Uh, I'm still learning that.
uh And then you move to Egypt.
Yes. So we finished our time in India and then back to the States for 2 years to Seattle. So going from a small village of 18 million people, Mother Teresa, all this kind of stuff, we go to see Grandma and Grandpa Dobson, who live in Bremerton, Washington, outside of Seattle.
That's a change.
Zero. No elephants, no possessed people. Well, there were some, and no snake charmers, and all
There
that.
is some in Washington State, maybe, but
Yeah,
they don't call themselves that.
yeah, yeah. So it was kind of culture shock for us. We had to like kill our Indian British accents and come up with an American one as quickly as possible. That was in about fourth grade. So, when you grow up as a world citizen, you kind of learn to be kind of like a chameleon, and you're constantly adjusting and figuring out your situation. And I think my sense of humor kind of comes from having to adapt all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
And I
true.
think I think one of the major blessings of growing up as a missionary kid is that, and traveling around, is that I can start to relate to so many people from different places. And just by a comment or like, oh yes, I've been to your country and I've tried this food or this ice cream or something that stuck out. And it's a huge, huge blessing as a photographer to be able to connect people with people, because we're always looking for some way to connect, and
Right.
to start a conversation. Yeah.
Now, I want to tell people who are watching and listening, I brought a camera because I know at one point you're gonna learn something from. I mean, I can't have an expert, a world-renowned photographer, and not ask him about photography. But I want to ask you a question before that. Being called named David, and
Yes.
being in Egypt taking
Yes.
pictures, what was, and you
Well,
didn't get arrested.
yeah, yeah. No, I almost did. Okay. So now we jump to Egypt, and I get to Cairo, and there was a really pretty girl at my school. I'll just tell you the true story of how I got into photography. It was a girl. And so this is in 7th grade. And she was hotter than Tabasco sauce in a jacuzzi.
And she was Egyptian.
Well, this one, she was from the States.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So my friend and I wound up taking pictures of her and everything. And that's kind of how we got started. And in junior high, they have a loophole where it's hormones and the guy's just nuts anyways, but it's junior high. Okay. 9th grade, it becomes stalking and it's haram and you can public execution. But in 7th and 8th grade, whatever. Yeah. So we took lots of pictures of her, and it was the photo teacher was like more lenient back in junior high. 9th grade, I get that girl had to go back to the States. They finished their contract and they moved back to the States. So now I get a new photo teacher, and he's really strict, and he doesn't like me, and he starts cussing out my pictures. So yeah, I would bring in my favorite picture and show him, and then he would, I can't say it on the show, but he would just cuss out the pictures. And one day we're in Old Cairo, and he says, don't take any pictures, wait till we get into the gold market, and then, don't waste your film. And we were crossing this little lane, and I saw these 2 Egyptian ladies with they had a cart, like a donkey cart, and they were killing and boiling and cleaning chickens. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. So I set my camera, to the side, and then I just turn, and when I go like this, at that moment, the lady with the knife goes like, no, like this.
And she threw the knife at you.
She didn't throw it. I think
he needs it for the chicken. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my photo teacher probably wished that she would have thrown it, but she was just saying no and no picture, And so I got the picture, and I went on, and then my photo teacher saw it, and then he freaked out, and I thought he was going to be angry again. And he's like, no, this is an excellent picture. And that was a turning point. And then he took an interest in me, and he liked my pictures, and now he would cuss out my pictures, but in a good way, in a positive way.
And he was Egyptian, right?
No, this was an American. This was an
American. Oh, and he didn't like you.
Yeah.
I thought there's camaraderie when you're on overseas,
Yeah. So then I started going on these trips on my own every weekend into Old Cairo. Now, I had to learn some lessons, and these lessons helped me through the rest of my career. So Egypt is not really a photo-friendly country. They like pictures. And
Muslim countries are not.
Yeah, they don't really like. They're very suspicious. Why? And no. India, total opposite. Take the picture. Come on, include me in the picture, right? So okay, so I had to learn at an early age how to use humor to diffuse the situation that could get crazy in the street in Old Cairo. And so one of the ways that I learned was to make up a funny name, take my name and change it into a funny name in Egyptian Arabic. So you can imagine I'm like 12 years old, and these guys are like, like shouting, and they're using their hands and everything, and like this. And so they would say, what's your name? Who are you? What are you doing? So I told them. They thought I was a spy. Okay.
Right. With a name like David, being Jewish. I mean, you're not Jewish, but I mean, Jewish name.
Exactly. That's what they thought, that I was a spy. And so the first thing I learned in Arabic was La habibi kullu kwais, ana kwais, ana mish harami, ana talib, ana kwais zay enta, which means
I'm not a criminal. I'm not. Yeah, I don't.
I'm not a thief.
I'm a student. I'm not a thief.
And I just want to take your pictures. I'm 12 years old. Then they'd be, okay, well, that's fine. You're a student. But what's your name? Then I would tell them Daoud, which is David, which is a Jewish name, King David.
Daoud, yeah. Daoud.
Yes. So then you can imagine, like, no. See, we knew. We told you. We knew. So I changed my name to, I would stop and compose myself, and I would say, Ismi Sultan Daoud El Akbar El Sudani Abiyat. And then I would step back.
And what would that in English? My name is David, Sultan David.
Sultan David the Great, the White Sudanese.
The White Sudanese.
There are none. So now they're trying to figure out two impossibilities. How does the two impossibilities come together? And this is this guy. And by the time they're figuring that out, I told them Habibi, which means my dear friend.
Wow.
It's just a joke. It's just a joke. And then they would start laughing. Then they would tell me, no, you come and sit down and have tea with us. You know, like
Exactly. Now
you're
they're hospitable.
yeah. And then it's amazing. Middle Eastern hospitality, once you know, are invited in, is amazing, and it's super thick. You know that.
Yes.
And you have to say no 3 times before
Yeah.
they will agree that you said no. Like no, take it, take it, take it. You know, like no, 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 no. You're like 1, 2, no, 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 thank you, and then it's fine.
Good. Let me ask you this. You've been to 153 countries. Which is the best country you've been to? You feel like this is the greatest place to go?
Well, that's a very difficult question because it's
Top
like,
five. I'll give
yeah,
you five.
like what's your favorite food in the buffet? You know, the whole buffet is really good.
Yeah.
So I would say going around the world. Let's start like in Europe. I love London. London is super cool, and it just goes forever. And there's so much amazing shopping and history, and I'm always surprised that a country so small could rule the world. You know, and
Yeah.
so I would say London, and then Morocco. Morocco is super
Morocco,
cool.
yes.
And I have a funny story for you in Morocco, but Morocco's ancient and amazing, and lots of architecture and all that kind of stuff, and food, the amazing food. So
Yes.
then Egypt, of course, you know, and then the Holy Lands is awesome. And the
Of
funny
course.
thing, you know, being in Israel, it should be called Sunday School Land, because yeah, because people say like, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" You're like, "Nothing." They're like, "Well, why don't you meet us for pizza down in Bethlehem?" You're like, "Whoa, you can't say that. There's only a manger and you know baby pizza." And what do you mean go for no, 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 man? On the main square is really, really good pizza.
There's a good pizza place, yeah. Let
Yeah,
me ask you while we're talking about the Holy Land. Let's
yeah.
read your shirt. It has my name on
Well,
it or
yeah,
some.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's read it.
So I got into cooking, and so I made this T-shirt to kind of joke with you, and it's supposed to. Well, I'll just show you. Can you read it, or is it backward?
Yes, I can read. It says, "Have you tried cheeses of Nazareth in the old market? In
Yes,
s- in what? In
in
seven old
Nazareth.
mar in Nazareth."
Yes. So it's supposed to be like a grocery store. And it's called Cheeses of Nazareth. So I don't know if you've ever opened or thought about opening a cheese store, but if you do, I'm the first guy with the t-shirt.
That's funny. Because always people come to me and say, "Hey, you heard the joke about the new factory? It's called Cheeses of Nazareth."
Uh-huh.
But okay, let me put this straight. You're into cooking right now. You're a
Yeah.
great photographer. You probably how many hundreds or thousands of models that you
Besides
photographed
besides you, the other
besides
one?
me, yeah. Because you took, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the man that took my headshots, my pictures, my photos, and
It was
we
one of
did
the
it.
roughest shoots I've ever done anywhere in the world.
Yes, it was in San Diego, and because there's an area in San Diego, all the buildings look like you're in Europe. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
was,
You don't
was,
have.
yeah.
So
And
tell
you
me,
were working it. You were working it. I remember. Yeah, you pulled out
yes,
some classics, some classics.
thing. Let me ask you this, and I don't know. I hope I'm not stepping on anything, but you've been all over the world. You're a great photographer. You love to cook. You love great food, and we went to this Moroccan restaurant together with my family, and we loved it.
Yeah.
Why are you still single?
Yeah, that is the greatest unsolved mystery of my life.
Would you
Pretty much.
consider, are you considering, like, would you, if you meet a lady and you think, what's your criteria for marrying someone?
Well, she has to be. I adjusted it a little bit, and she needs to be somewhere between 18 and 64. So
18 and 64.
I opened the window a bit before. So I I have
Would you
friends.
marry one in her 30s? Would you, or would you consider someone in her 40s? Or
There's a word in Arabic. It's yalla. Yalla
yalla
means let's
means come
go.
on, let's go.
Yes.
Okay, what is your criteria, honestly? What do you look
Okay,
for
so I'm looking for a gosh girl. So it's an acronym, gosh girl. Godly, organized, single, hot.
organized? Why is that?
Yes, because I'm not organized. You and I were like, you were trying to help me get online for this interview.
Yeah, that's
So
why we started a
yeah,
little few minutes late. But so
yeah.
yeah, I'm like you. I'm not detailed oriented. I'm
No,
not.
no, no. So someone who's organized, like the Osbournes, Ozzy Osbourne. I would definitely be Ozzy minus the drugs, just naturally like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I need someone like Sharon who can organize everything, and then I can just kind of show up and
So godly, organized. What's the third
single,
one?
single. It's
Single,
super
of course.
important.
Yeah,
Super important to be single.
yeah. You don't want. Oh, how about divorced or she have kids? Is that okay?
Single, single. Yeah, I like kids. Kids are super cool. I've had so much fun being an uncle and being a godfather. And kids most of the time are cooler than their parents.
Most of
Yeah,
the time. And
yeah.
the last one is H
Hot,
for hot.
hot.
What's
Yeah.
what's your criteria of hot?
Well, you know what? We could actually drop the H. As I get
Well,
older,
not too far. You
pressure,
don't want to drop
pressure.
it all the
Yeah,
way down.
yeah. Lukewarm, lukewarm.
Lukewarm, lukewarm hot.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I'm a photographer, so I think someone who's comfortable with doing pictures and traveling and having fun, and I love shopping and eating and like trying new foods. And now I wish if I had a time machine, I wish I could have gone back in time and spent more time to learn what the cooks were preparing in the schools and the projects that I was photographing in, because I smelt
Oh.
it smelt amazing. And yeah, basically like a friend and someone who's up for adventures. But I've traveled a lot. I don't have to travel as much as I used to. So if
Right.
you hear that I'm traveling again, well, then things didn't work out so well.
Okay, I brought a camera, and you know what?
Yeah.
In the past, when you say a photographer, you go, "Wow!" And then Costco and Sam's Club starting bringing the prices
Yes.
down on these
Yes.
cameras, and now
Yes.
you can get them for 700 or 800 bucks. You can become a photographer.
Yeah.
What separates a professional photographer from an amateur photographer? I mean, that's the whole. I'm sorry, that's the whole
Well,
field.
digital brought that bridge closer together. Before, it was really expensive to have camera gear, and it was a commitment, and like processing the film and all that kind of stuff. Digital came along. Now everybody has access to our secret weapons, right?
Right.
So, and then the iPhone, this thing right here, is I can do a week's worth of work in 10 seconds on my iPhone, fixing the picture up and all that, and post it and send it to
Yeah.
you, that kind of thing. So I think, like if people ask me for advice, like, do you have any tips?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think
That's what I want.
one of the things that I've learned is that you need to, like learn your camera, but you need to learn how to be fast and know how the camera works, but don't stress out about it. There's so many modes and things that will help you to be able to take the picture.
Yeah, I always have these. Like, you know what? If I look at him, it says this. There's always the A. What is the A for?
Yeah, I think it stands for automatic. So the
Automatic.
camera's going to do all the work for you.
Okay, and the
Yeah,
P is for what?
program. So
Program.
I think that's a good question, because it's two ways of saying automatic. I think in one way, the camera is making the choices for you. It's making the fastest shutter speed, so there's no a motion blur, and then it's choosing the best aperture to make it the sharpest focus. Okay, so I
Mhm.
think that's what they're talking about. The other ones are more obvious. S is for shutter priority, so you choose the
Oh,
shutter speed.
what about
A,
M?
M is manual. You don't want to go there. Not on the
Oh,
first date.
okay, how about AV and TV?
Those you're talking in Canon language, and I'm a Nikon guy.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, but it's fine. So TV, I think it means time value, which means the shutter speed. In Nikon, they just say S for shutter.
Okay,
And then the other one, what was your other one?
AV.
Aperture value or something like that. So that
And
means
the B, yeah, go ahead. What
yeah,
does
yeah.
that mean?
So the aperture just means how much do you want to have in focus. And so an easy way to think of it is like, how much do you want to have in focus? So when I photograph people, I like to use I basically have one camera and one lens, and I love that system. It's super easy. It's not
Oh,
confusing.
do you
And
use a small short lens or
no,
the like? I have this. I don't know. This is something
yeah,
my son. He's into
yeah,
film. So what is this for? Is this a long, is that what you use, a
Yeah.
long one?
Well, so yes, so that's a zoom lens. So that gives you like a variety of like from a wide angle to like zooming in, telephoto. Okay.
Okay.
So I use one of those lenses, like what you're holding in your hand, on my
Uh,
camera. Yeah. And it's
the lens.
wide and it's a medium telephoto. So I usually stay in the telephoto for shooting portraits of people. So like a
Uh-huh.
headshot. And then I use a very shallow depth of field, which is usually like f4, and then that blurs out the background. Because
Oh,
when I'm shooting Naz, uh, I don't want any distractions in the background. We want to keep the focus up front.
so how do you do that on a Nikon when you don't remove
To
the
blur it,
background
to
to
blur
blur
it,
it?
just by choosing the aperture like at f4, and then
Ah,
yeah. So
so the B here on the Canon, is that's what the blur is?
I have no
You
idea.
don't know? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So and the short, this short lens, what is that for?
So that is like it's most probably a 50 millimeter lens, which is the standard lens, and that's just a good all around lens. And it's you can shoot in darker situations with that. But
I
to
see.
be honest with you, I take that lens and I just put it on the shelf because I see that you have some space on the shelf. Just put it there and use the other one.
All the time, right? I see.
Yeah.
That's good, helping people. Okay, for people who are using their iPhone
Yo,
and
I
stuff.
love the iPhone. And it's like
What?
cheating. It's like cheating. Remember, I was telling you about blurring the
Yeah.
background? They have a portrait mode. And if I would have had an iPhone when I was 12 years old and continued my career with the iPhone, I would have a much better back. I wouldn't be as grumpy and crabby and crusty. I'd probably be married by now and have 8 kids, one of them named Nazareth. But they have portrait mode in here, and then you can, with your finger, you can control how blurry you want the background. That's so
Oh,
not fair. That is so not fair. So
now,
it,
go ahead.
so it'd be like for you, if there was like a comedy app, it could be like, how loud do you want the people to laugh, and when do you want them to laugh on command?
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
not
amazing.
fair, not fair.
Now, if I want to take my wife loves to take pictures and
Yeah,
to, and my daughters, of course, there's
yes.
teenagers. Now, what is the best thing to take a picture of them, like on the iPhone,
If
just
it's a
the
if
best
it's a
with the light and everything? What's the best way to do it?
if it's a individual picture of your daughter,
Uh,
I would go into portrait mode, take the picture and blur out the background, because you want well, maybe you don't, as a father of a daughter, maybe you want to blur the foreground in case guys are going to be seeing the picture, and then just keep the
yeah,
background in focus.
that's funny. Yeah. Oh, that's so okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you call it? Okay, let's say you are what's the best light? What's the best time? What's the best light when you're using your phone? Yeah.
Yeah. So personally, it's all personal preference, and so there's a couple rules in photography of like, how it works, like technically how the picture works and that kind of stuff, and how you manipulate those rules and laws is becomes your personal style. Because a picture could be light, and then somebody could say like, oh, it's too bright, but that's your style. Other people shoot darker than normal, and then that's their style. It's more moody. So really, you have to just get out and get comfortable with your camera or your phone, whatever it is. And then what I learned was you have to shoot fast, because people aren't going to hang around.
Uh,
Nobody's as interested in your picture as you are. And so I learned, especially with shooting bands, you got to be fast, because they're not models. They don't want to do the picture, and they get bored and they
mm.
wander away. I don't want to mention any names of bands that I've traveled with, especially the Newsboys. I would never mention that.
I'm working with them in 2 weeks, and the
Yeah,
picture that they had on the album is you're the one who took it. Yeah.
yeah. So I love those guys, but they're musicians. They're not models. And so it's a miracle that I get those pictures with them. And they're very lenient. And we kind of work together.
Who's
Quick story.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I would never mention their
Newsboys.
name, the Newsboys. So I had been waiting and waiting to shoot with them. We went to Russia. We went to St. Petersburg, and it has this beautiful church with the onion shape and everything. I'm just imagining, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. I'll get the guys lined up. We won't spend more than 3 hours to create this. If I'm going to need about that much time. We get there. Let's say my fingers are the guys and my face is the church in the background. I line them up all perfect. This is amazing. I start shooting and I run out of film because it was film.
Oh, back then.
I look down to change the film, and when I look up, all the guys are gone. Finished. That was it. They went shopping. They went.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
So you got to be fast.
I know who's the most celebrity that impressed you when you were doing photography?
Well,
or who you photograph, or
there's been quite a few people. On my website, you can see like in the music section, if you're interested in musicians, I got between 2002 and 2008, I lived in Nashville for the first time, and I got to shoot with so many bands and wonderful experiences and funny experiences. And I think that in my experience, I had to be 40% a photographer and 60% a host.
That's important. Say that again, because photographers need to hear this from you.
Yeah. So these are rough numbers, and of course tithing and everything, but rough numbers.
Say that again. Say it again.
40%, you need to be technically a really good photographer, but 60%, you need to be a really good host and entertainer, because you got to keep the energy going. You got to keep the person, connected and involved. The story from St. Petersburg, perfect example.
What happened one time? You mentioned there's something exciting that happened to you. You were flying, you were taking photos.
So I've almost died a couple times, and I'm very thankful for family that prays for me. And like in your story, your wife said, I've been praying for a person like you for years, right? So I'm still waiting for that. So if she has another sister, okay, so I'm thankful for people who've prayed for me, because I have used so much credit.
Actually, she does have a sister.
Okay. Okay, so
she's a widow and she's very young. So
okay, so I'm gonna
we can work on that. Get back in there. We'll work on that. We have to get approval from Mahaf, my wife.
Absolutely. So I'm in Brazil and I'm on a missions trip, and they have the rich area of the city. This is in Rio de Janeiro. And they have the rich part and then they have the poor part with the slums. And I wanted to show the difference, and I wanted to show both. So I hired this small airplane. And when I say hired, I mean, it probably cost me $50. And so think of like a 1974 Nova, but in bad shape, not a hot rod. And this was the flying equivalent. And so I asked the pilot, before we take off, can we take out the window so I can take pictures without the glare of the glass? And he's like, yeah, no problem. So he took the window off. So then I said, can you take out your one in case I shoot this way? Yes, he took it off. And so we're going to take off. And he goes, oh, sorry, we got to wait. And I'm all like, why? He goes, see that airplane? That airplane, the wheels aren't coming down. First, it has to crash land, and then they'll clean it, and then we can go on.
They have to clean
it. Yeah.
Sure.
So finally, we get up in the air and we're flying, and I undid my
over the statue of Jesus, right, with his arms.
Christ the Redeemer. So here's
the famous one.
Got his hands out, and I thought that's just the way that they, sculpted it, built it. So, anyways, we're flying. I undid my seatbelt, and I'm on this side, and the pilot's on this side. And the pilot asked me, "Did you get the picture?" And I said, "Yes, yeah, good." Then he turns like this to fly around Christ the Redeemer statue. And my door pops open, and my cameras were on the dashboard of the airplane. It's only a 2-seater. And so I'm scared of heights, and I look out and I can see right down below into the slums and buildings and everything. So I reach out without looking, close the door, grab my cameras, do the seatbelt, and alhamdulillah, we made it.
you would have fell.
I'll save falling into the Lord's arms until another time.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
That is
for you. Now it's funny. At the time, it was pretty crazy.
Yes. So what is another funny story? It's like some, like people you what if you meet like a model or someone that you don't like even photographing? They have a bad attitude. They
Yeah.
don't like it. How do you go through that?
How do I diplomatically maneuver through such situations?
Right.
Well, to be honest with you, I've been very, very blessed. And if I'm shooting, if I'm shooting a commercial project or working with models, I always pray before I shoot.
Uh-huh.
And it sets some boundaries, and it also lets people know like where I'm at, and where I'm not going. And so I've been blessed, and I have so much fun with the people that I shoot with. So I don't really have a bad story. Like nobody freaked out and smashed something and walked away.
Have you ever been in a country that it doesn't like Americans, like Cuba or something, or maybe
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Venezuela?
yeah.
Tell
So
us about that.
another thing that I learned in Egypt is never get into a conversation in the street about religion or politics. Stay
Mm.
neutral, ask about the family, all that kind of stuff, but don't go to those topics because that just means that it's going to turn into a fight, an argument. So, but I did have a chance to go to Cuba, and I had been
Okay.
waiting and waiting to go. And when I got to Havana, Havana actually reminded me so much of Calcutta because those
Ah.
are both very glamorous cities from years ago. And then because of communism and whatever, they didn't repair the buildings, and the whole city started to rot. And so you have super glamorous, like finding the Titanic. So
Yes, and you had a good
yeah.
analogy for that. It's like having someone living inside a dead carcass.
Yeah, I don't want to say
That's
that,
a,
like on the internet, and get recorded, and then people will say like, "Hey, we heard what you said. You're not coming into our country." But no, it's true.
oh, I said it. You
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. Thank you. So, like my work is very, especially on the mission side of things, can be very emotional and very like heartfelt and very trying. Like I've photographed disaster relief projects. I love shooting disaster relief. And
Oh,
when I do those projects as a photographer, I think that that is the best thing that I can do with my skills on that day, is to be involved with that project and help share that story. Like I can't handle blood, so there's no chance of me being a doctor. But if I photograph a situation and a doctor sees it and says, "Oh, I've got some vacation time, I want to come over and help out," then in a way, I got to help that medical situation
right.
as a photographer. So there's tons and tons of funny stories. I love funny stories, but this is kind of a funny story, but it's kind of sad at the same time. So I'm in
Mhm.
Cuba, and it's been super fun. I learned Spanish in Egypt, which is crazy because nobody speaks Spanish.
Nobody's been.
Only my class at school.
Okay.
So you think my Arabic's bad, my Spanish is worse. So I get to Cuba, and had a great time, and wonderful experience. I'm at the airport and I'm chewing my last piece of gum. So I started the chewing gum downtown, and now I'm at the airport. So I've been chewing it for at least an hour. And I was kind of nervous about the flight. So I'm chewing. And I get to the airport and I go to check in, and there's a little boy and girl, brother and sister, and they're watching me. And they're watching me get closer and closer in the line to check in. And so the little sister, I mean, they're little, let's say 8 and 6 or something like that. She comes up to me, she's like, oye, gringo. She's all like, do you have any chewing gum? And I'm all like, no, I'm so sorry. This is like my last piece. And I'm like, okay. So she goes away. I get closer to the check-in, and she comes up and says, "We want your chewing gum." And I said, "I'm so
Oh.
sorry, I don't have any chewing gum." And she goes, "No, we want your chewing gum, that one." And then I started laughing. I'm like, "No, you're talking about this one in my mouth, like this?" And she's like, "Yes, we want your chewing gum." And so I said, "I've been chewing it for so long." She goes, No, we want it. And so I'm all like, "Okay, I'll dare you." So I took it and I gave it to her, and she split it in half and gave half to her brother, and then she took the
Oh.
other half, and now they're chewing my hour and a half old chewing gum. So then
Oh.
they go away, they go check in and everything, and I come into the next room, and I see her and her brother talking, and she says, "I have to go to the bathroom. You chew my chewing gum until I come back, and then you give it back to me." So,
That's poverty, right?
yeah, well, on one level it's a funny story, but on the other level, it's like it's
Yeah.
horrible that people have to live like that.
I know. And you've
Yeah.
seen a lot. I mean, being in
Yes.
India and in Egypt, I mean,
Yeah.
Egypt is horrible too. It's poverty level in some
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
Not in Cairo, but you go down
Oh yeah,
south and all that.
but outside of the States, the world's a very different place. And I remember one of the biggest traumatizing things for me was to go to Louisiana, when I go to New Orleans for the first time. And I'm thinking, growing up in third world, Americans always come over to help out.
Right.
And so America has to be a perfect place because they only ever come to help. And so I get to Louisiana and I go across that big bridge out of New Orleans and I see the poverty, and couldn't believe that this was happening in America, you know?
Mm.
So it was kind of very eye-opening to realize that there's those kind of situations here as well.
Uh, people, you're an amazing man, and I love you, and I love your heart. And
Thank you.
can you encourage some of the people that here with us for a few minutes before we close? And I know I want to encourage you because I know sometimes it's hard being single. You have all these experiences that you want to share with people and with your loved ones, and I know you have friends and family around
Yeah.
you and your parents, and but. I always encourage singles with one thing and said, you know what? You meeting a person that God prepared for you is maybe uncertain right now. You're not certain. So stick to what's certain. And what's certain that God loves you. He has the
Yeah.
best plan for your life and all that. What do you encourage people listening and watching right now? If you give them,
Yeah.
from someone who's been to 153
Yeah.
countries around the world.
Okay, so I'll tell you about a deal that I made with God. But about how much time do we have? Because you know me.
You can. We started a few minutes late, so whatever you want to do. We
Okay,
don't have.
okay.
This is a
So
podcast.
okay, so this takes place in Egypt. It's the night before high school graduation, and because of yearbook, I was like a rock star on campus. It was amazing. I got so many privileges and skipped class and blah blah blah. Mostly because my photo teacher didn't want to do their work, so he made me do it and wrote me a note. So, anyways, so I'm laying in bed. Tomorrow I'm graduating from high school, and I realize around midnight that I am going to be a nobody. As soon as I get my diploma, I go from rock star to nobody, and I start freaking
Mm,
out. So I'm like, what am I going to do? When I get back to America, what's my plan? I, me. What am I going to do? What's my plan? I, me. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't figure out what I was going to do. So I just stopped and I said, okay, God, I'll make a deal with you. I'll go anywhere, anytime, as long as you provide the way. And it was as if he was saying, I was just waiting for you to flip the switch, and I have some plans for you.
mm.
So I was just trying to get from Cairo back to the States, and I wound up going to like 153 countries. So I never, ever imagined that I'd get to do that.
So doing God's will is a lot better in our lives
Yeah,
than
it's
doing
it's not
asking.
it's
Yeah,
not perfect or easy when you agree to it. There's definitely rough stuff, but it's a lot better than doing your own plan, because every time I tried to do my own plan, I ran out of money. This didn't work, that didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, the best times in my career was when I was doing like what I was supposed to be doing.
right, right. And you
Yeah.
you took pictures of Joyce Myers and other
Mhm.
people and all that. Now, what is in this pandemic? What are you doing right now? What are you doing
Well,
in this?
it's normally I would be freaking out because I haven't gone on a trip. I have I all the jet lag wore off, and now I don't know what to do, right? I thought that was going to be my problem. And so I for years I lived in kind of like perpetual jet lag, and it was just like go home, wash your clothes, get the stuff ready, go on the next trip. It's very much like music world. And so during this time, I got to sit down and enjoy trips that I had taken previously, but never had time to think about them and
Mm,
remember them. And, so like I could sit on my couch and imagine a trip somewhere. And within 20 minutes, I had gone to that place, done everything, gone to my favorite restaurant, gone this, blah, 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 got back on the plane and came back. And I'm still in Franklin, Tennessee. It's fun, you know, because I never took time to remember those trips because I was always worried about the next trip, the next trip. So it's definitely been slow. I think it's been slow for everybody, you know, and so everybody's recalibrating and figuring out, you know, how they're going to do it and, you know, what's the next phase. And, but the Lord's provided along the way. Thank God for my family and friends and, you know, having time to sit around and tell stories and hang out. And one of the best things, my favorite thing that I got to do during the pandemic was I had come over to visit my parents for the weekend,
Mm.
and they live in Springfield, Missouri. And so I drove over to hang out with them, and then the lockdown came, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like stuck in Springfield,
Mm.
and so I started recording with a recorder and microphones our family story with my parents. So I'd ask my
Oh.
dad, how did you know? How did your story begin? Mom, how did your story begin? Dad's from Seattle. Mom grew up as a missionary kid in Kenya. So started hearing like all these stories. How did you guys meet? Then how did we get to the first country? What happened in India? What happened in Egypt? So it's been really cool to, you know, invest Corona time
Uh-huh.
in those kind of things. So
That's
I,
a good thing for
yeah,
people to do right now. Is just find out where your parents from and what
yeah.
they've done, and you might learn something. But thank you so much, David. I mean, how can people see your gallery? How can they see your Instagram? Where can they go to get a hold of you?
Well, the website is just daviddobsonphoto.com. And that's my commercial website. So there's multiple galleries inside that, but if you click on that, daviddobsonphoto.com, it'll take you to women's travel fashion. But you have to go to the other galleries. There's music, there's cars, all that kind of stuff. That's that world. Then I made another website, which is just daviddobson.org. And that's more like the missions kind of stuff and black and white travel photos and that sort of thing. But another project that I am excited about working on is to pass the baton to next generation before I forget where I put the baton. Okay. So, so I wanted to do these ebooks for kids, 8 to 12. I got my first camera at 8, and by 12, I knew I wanted to be a photographer. So that project is called ddadventurebooks.com.
Uh-huh.
And so it's just to inspire and encourage kids to use their talents, whatever it is. For me, it was a camera. It could be a microphone, a guitar, a stethoscope, whatever, to make their world a better place. So it tells stories that the kids go with me on an adventure travel to a different country. And by the end of the story, they're able to help kids in that country, 8 to 12 years old, if they choose to. So that's kind of,
Wow.
that's my dream. That's my dream.
Praise God. And if
That's why,
someone,
that's why she has to be organized.
yes, what if she's like, oh, I like him and I don't know how to, yeah, is there's a contact place where, what is your Instagram?
Instagram. You're very Middle Eastern. Yeah, Habibi.
I am.
It's
Instagram.
David Dobson photo on Instagram. So I
Okay.
live on Instagram, but it mirrors on Facebook. So if you don't get a response from Facebook, it's because I live on Instagram.
David Dobson photo.
Yeah, yeah,
David, thank you so
yeah.
much. I can't
No,
wait
thank
till
you.
the time we're gonna get together, work together. I know we will when this whole pandemic
Yeah,
and we're all
yeah, yeah.
vaccinated.
So
Uh,
thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for talking the very first time we met backstage at the festival. Since then, I mean, we've laughed so much
yes.
in Colorado. So
It's a highlight of my 2 days there. It's like
yeah,
to see you and then just to spend time and talk. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I pray that the Lord blessing on you and
thank
hopefully,
you,
if
thank
He
you.
bring the right woman to your life
Yes,
soon. And hopefully, if it's because of this podcast, I'd like to get some kind of like marketing budget from her, not you. Well, thank you so much,
yeah,
David.
thank
And I
you.
want to encourage you guys, if you David Dobson photo and daviddobson.org and David Dobson photo dot photography dot
No, no,
com.
daviddobsonphoto.com, and
Dobson
then
photo dot org.
daviddobson.org, and then Instagram is just David Dobson photo. Instagram, and it has links from there.
Perfect. And I want to
Yeah,
remind you every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, join us for an hour of Live with Naz where you can just belly laugh for an hour And then at the end, you just share with us your prayer request, and we kind of encourage you a little bit. And tonight will be our 180th show, so join us.
Mabruk.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you, David, and God bless you guys, and have
Thank you.
a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.